Elden Ring Nightreign released on May 30th, 2025, and is one of the many Fromsoftware installments. Following a similar trend as before, Fromsoftware released something slightly differently from what they released previously. From Bloodborne to Sekiro and beyond, each iteration they saw what worked and didn't, using that to better the next game. Or did they? Well, after spending a month playing the game, alongside when I was away reflecting on the game, I had a lot of time to think about it. Before we jump into the review and my thoughts on Elden Ring Nightreign, I want to quickly share my experience with these games. My first Soulsborne game was Dark Souls 3, shortly after its release. It's quite bad then, but really enjoyed the game and its lore. Since then, I've played all the mainline Soulsborne games and other titles such as Liza P, Lords of the Fallen, and Blasphemous. Expect to see a review on Blasphemous 1 and 2 in the future. Elden Ring was when I really started to dive deeper into the Soulsborne games, and since its release, I've completed over 30 challenge runs. From No Death, Ara 1+0, all bosses, duels only, and beyond. I had a lot of fun playing that game. But how does Nightreign fare? Well, let's talk about it. Let's start with the basics, as this varies a lot in comparison to the main game of Elden Ring. The player will select a solo or co-op run, then a boss is selected from the round table hold. The players will load into the world, usually starting next to a small camp. From churches that increase flasks, to cave with smithing stone 2s, there are plenty of options for the player. After 5 minutes or so, the first ring will start to collapse, and the players will need to relocate. Similarly, this ring also lasts about 5 minutes. This is when the first night occurs, and the players will need to rush to the designated zone. The bosses vary, but there are some special ones that are tied to certain Night Lords. For instance, Fulgor's Gauntlet has a high likelihood of spawning Nameless King on the second night compared to other Night Lords. This is then repeated a second time as the players go through day 2. It all accumulates into a battle with a legendary Night Lord foe. I'll talk a lot more about each boss in the gameplay loop, but I want to lay out the basics first. As the players going through Limveld, they will encounter numerous enemies and bosses. Certain enemies and most bosses upon defeat will drop a selectable reward. This varies from boss to boss and person to person. Generally, there is one or more tangible rewards such as a weapon, sacred seal, or staff. This is alongside there being a buff to your character, from increasing physical damage to shortening the player's skill cooldown. This variety lets the player choose and craft their build. As mentioned previously, there is a night cycle with 2 sections with the day and ending with a night boss. The world will have a storm that slowly closes and opens throughout the match. This is similar to many battle royale games from PUBG to Warzone. From classics to new enemies, there's a lot of old and new enemies to be found in Nightreign. When the trailer released and I saw Nameless King, Archduke Freya, and all the other Dark Souls bosses, I was hyped to see what was in store. PS1 they added Gaping Dragon and Centipede Demon. PS2 they added Archduke Freya and Smelter Demon. PS3 was Nameless King and Dancer of the Boreal Valley. On the flip side, each Night Lord is a brand new addition to the roster, even if they've played the main game Elden Ring only. Now I have to talk about this. I was really hoping for Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Demon Souls bosses as well, but I understand there's probably some conflicting issues with IPs, licensings and stuff like that. Still, I was quite surprised that Sekiro bosses didn't make the roster. Seeing Sword Saint Ishin would have been insane. This was a lot of the more basic things with Nightreign. Relics, shifting earths, passive versus special effects, etc. will be covered later on in the detailed section. For now, let's move into the characters and story sections. Nightreign introduced a more extreme version of their previous titles with less focus on the specific levels and instead balanced everything around individual characters. Let me explain. Previously, there would be multiple choices when the player starts their journey. In the Dark Souls trilogy, this could be Pyromancer, Knight, etc. While there are those roles in Nightreign, such as Pyromancer and Knight, they are tied to specific weapons. The Wilder, aka the Knight, wants to use a sacred seal, go ahead. The Revenant wants to go big bonk with a giant club, sure. Instead of tying 40 levels for a weapon and all these other specific requirements, the player just needs to be level 3, 7, or 10, depending on the weapon rarity. Essentially, there's a lot more freedom with weapons and beyond in Nightreign. While they may not be ideal on all characters, it is cool to see them implement this feature. As we move further into the review, there will be spoilers ahead for those interested. From Wilder to Executor, options and playstyles for players to choose from. Let's start from the top. Wilder is your all-around well-versed character. He starts with a grapple hook that's excellent for giving the player extra maneuverability. Lastly, when nearing death, he will dodge away once, giving the player an extra chance. The bird, the myth, the legend. From taking tactical nukes the bosses shoot at the player, this character is able to block most attacks with a shield and unique ability for shield blocking. At the whole Elden Ring roster, the Guardian has one of, if not the best resurrection method for reviving teammates. That ultimate ability is goated. Starting with a bow and a special ability to mark targets, this guy is quite underrated damage-wise. Similarly to Guardian, he has one of the better ultimate abilities for reviving teammates. Starting with a dagger, Duchess is excellent at close quarters combat. Both her passive and character skill are extremely beneficial for the player, so much so that she has some of the highest damage per second in the game, from my experience at least. Presaging damage on enemies is massive and shreds through their health bar. Her ultimate art is pretty underwhelming on the flip side, which balances her out. Nowadays, she is my favorite character to play as in Nightreign, but at first it was Iron Eye. Raider is the tank of the group. As Raider once said to me, I bonk enemies, and I couldn't agree more. Using his retaliate skill to pummel targets while receiving damage is excellent for massive poise damage against enemies and bosses. Revenant is able to use spirit summons to aid her in battle, alongside having a high faith stat lineup. Sacred Seals are the best on this character, though I found myself going for a big bonk build on this character more so than Raider. It's hilarious to see her using a massive weapon, like in the case of the Dragon Great Claw, or health and steeple. The second to last character is the Recluse. This character, I would have to say, has been influenced by Nightreign's mechanics more so than others on the list. For instance, FP, aka the blue magic mana bar, changed a lot from the main game regarding this specific character. To explain, whenever the player is low on FP in Nightreign, there are a few choices depending on what events occurred. Resting at a local grace will instantly fill the bar. Starlight shards will partially fill it. This consumable can be found and bought from merchants. The last way to my knowledge is after defeating the Augur raid, where using red flasks fills up the FP meter. Basically, they remove blue flasks to gain FP, and so other methods are needed. With Revenant, this can be a bit of an issue, since FP recovery isn't in her base kit like Recluse. When an enemy is damaged, that elemental type is able to be siphoned. This does a couple of things. First is that it recovers some FP, and second is that it collects that element in a magic cocktail. There are so many combinations that makes using this character really fun. From firing a lightning blade to buffing the team's FP usage, this character has a lot of variety. The last character on the list is Executor. My two favorite reasons for playing him is that he can parry like in Sekiro, and also for the fact that he has S scaling in Arcane, so bleed, poison, and frost can be procced insanely quickly, and with more damage chunked per bleed proc. Well, there's a lot more that I could dive into with characters, talking about specific builds, which characters are better, and so on. I think this is sufficient in painting the picture of each character, what they can do. From Wilder to Executor, there are so many different playstyles which a player can choose from. Let's jump into the story for Nightreign. I won't be going into detail as there's a lot of information tucked away in item descriptions and beyond. Rather, this will be an extremely simple overview of the lore and story within the game. Starting off, the player learns about Limveld and the state of the lands between after the events of the main game. In this alternate universe, after the main game's ending, the Night Lords come into power. These cause different effects on the characters and beyond. One, for instance, is the Duchess and her brother, the Wilder seemingly forgetting each other. The 8 characters mentioned previously are locked in a never-ending battle against the Night, and there are 8 coffins in the bottom, like a little bit of the lore. I won't spoil too much of it in case you are interested, but go through some of the characters' remembrances, which I'll talk about right now. Unique to Nightreign is specialized character quests. These specific quests are tied to different characters. The Duchess, for instance, learns to reconnect with her brother. Revenant was the most interesting of the bunch. Her questline had some insanely tough moments. It was terrifying to fight a royal Revenant in a closed space. It reminded me of those dreaded challenge runs in the main game and having to fight the one in King's Realm Ruins. I highly recommend doing these objectives as this unlocks character-specific relics alongside a skin at quest completion. With the story and the characters explored, let's jump into the more detailed gameplay section. Let's start by going over the relics. These are effects that can be swapped before loading into a match. From infusing the starting weaponry with the bleed status effect to adding a poison effect to Iron Eye's ultimate ability, there are numerous effects to obtain. Most of the relics that you will obtain though will be quite terrible, and it'll be for like characters or like things that you just don't even want. Just like, come on, give me one that I just really need. Something good. These are quite fun to go after, I must admit, and I've really enjoyed the Everdark Sovereign credits to use for better relic purchasing. Another aspect to the relics is the Everjail meta that is currently in effect. Those who have been playing will know this all too well. There are relics that are sold in the collector's signboard and can be collected, just from RNG. This one specific relic starts a player with a stone sword key, buffs the player for each Everjail completed, and treasure being marked on the map. 5% damage increase for each Everjail completed has been an ever-growing meta within the community. I personally rather enjoy these Everjails, but the more annoying ones in my opinions are the multiple enemy ones like the Beastmen of Faramazula and so on. So those I dread whenever I fight them. Shifting Earths are modifiers to the world state, changing how the game can be played. From the crater to the Nokron-like area, there's a lot to explore and rewards to collect. Let's start from the top. Of the 4 Shifting Earth locations within Release, Crater is the second best in my opinion for beefing up runes and rewards. The crater will spawn a church and 2 legendary bosses up top, which can be quite insane. Like, I've had runs where 4 churches will spawn outside and then there's 1 inside, so you can collect 5 total, then you get 1 extra once you get to day 3, so it's like you're just absolutely popping off. First is the Valiant Gargoyle, and second is the Falling Star Beast, both of which can be tough fights. Traveling below and climbing down the winding ruins, the player will eventually come across a magma worm fight. At the end, the player will be able to upgrade any weapon to +3, besides legendary weapons. Every Shifting Earth has an ultimate reward, and this Shifting Earth is to upgrade the player's weaponry. As we go through the Shifting Earth locations, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts down below. Which one is your favorite, and which one do you dislike the most? Rotted Woods is an interesting Shifting Earth. Recently, since they changed and patched the game, I found myself going here in Nicoletto the most. Rotted Woods, though, has grown less on me each time I go through it. The ultimate reward in this Shifting Earth is being immune to Scarlet Rot, which will help survive the final area. Besides there being a ton of legendary bosses, there isn't a whole lot. The ultimate reward is quite weak compared to the craters, but not as useless as the next Shifting Earth location. Oh gosh, the mountaintop. This is arguably the worst Shifting Earth location to get. One thing I will say is the journey is quite fun to go through. Many of the bosses fought at each night cycle do not inflict frost, resulting in the player being frostbitten. Because of this, the ultimate reward is quite ineffective other than exploring the mountaintop. I think even when I fought the Primordial Night Lord, I rarely get frost status effect when he's using it. It's mostly just madness and poison. It just rarely happens, so I don't know, I feel like it's not as useful, but because of this, the ultimate reward is quite ineffective other than exploring the mountaintop. The only reason that this could be useful is if the player is fighting Caligo, the ice dragon. Still, the player will get half the benefit during Caligo's fight, unless they get frostbitten since he has high frost resistance. There may be some other aspect I'm overlooking, so let me know down below if you have found other uses for choosing this Shifting Earth. Nicoletto, arguably the best Shifting Earth location. In Nicoletto, the player is able to replicate any armament alongside getting the ultimate reward, which revives the player upon defeat, boosts their stats for some time. This is extremely good in co-op, but is quite redundant in solo, as the player can receive numerous Wending Graces. So I guess between co-op and solo, it's quite the rank disparity is definitely there. Definitely think solo, the crater is probably the best, but then co-op, it's Nicoletto. Going through the castle is quite awesome, and I really enjoy this location. Last thing I'll mention in this section is that I really hope to get more locations in the future, whether it's an area with madness, another could be Deathblight, since that and madness got such little attention in both games for how cool they are. Almost like Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne's DLC, where they can just get away with time's weird and stuff. So I feel like they could do, and it's also an alternate universe, so Godwin still inflicting Deathblight, maybe he's gonna be a boss. I think that's one thing that players have been begging for. But subsequently are the passive versus active effects. Mentioned earlier on that rewards can be found throughout Limveld. From weapons to boss rewards, there are a lot of ways the player can improve their build. Special effects are things such as boosting HP restoration from flasks, while the ultimate reward received from each Shifting Earth location. Passive effects are things such as physical damage negation, the player's resistance to sleep, madness, etc. Finding weapons and boss rewards can be super fun and hectic experience. One match you could have the RNG gods looking down on you with favor, to the next having the worst loot drops in the world. Either way, that is part of the fun in the game, the RNG and the chance of getting super awesome gear. Merchants can be found throughout the map and can offer the player consumables, upgrade materials, and weapons. This one specific merchant has better stock and will always always sell 3 really solid talismans. From weapons to talismans, these guys are worth running to during an expedition. Looking at the map, the player will notice a bunch of icons, with some of them including a small indicator on the bottom denoting the status effect or element associated with that location. Poison areas will have poison inflicting enemies or those associated with them, and so on. These will be randomly generated during each playthrough, so be on the lookout for areas that are worthwhile. Holy and lightning are quite tough to spot, but generally I go with lightning being more yellow compared to holy, which is more light orange. Of course, when I need lightning, when I'm fighting Fulgor, I just never get that camp because it just never spawns. There are a lot of bosses that can be fought in Limveld. I mentioned the running roster from the Dark Souls series, including Gaping Dragon, Nameless King, and beyond. The rest of the bosses found in Nightreign are the more ordinary bosses found in the main game. Valiant Gargoyles, Magma Worms, Royal Revenants, and beyond. Radon, Melania, etc. aren't returning in the game. The only exception to this rule is that Godric and Morgott are in this, and they have much enhanced movesets. These are some really fun fights to go through, especially in the first few attempts. The last thing I'll mention within the detailed section is the various world events that can randomly take place. Mentioned in the previous section Morgott already, but to further explain, he will randomly drop in targeting one player. This is both a double-edged sword, since that player will need to handle Morgott's wrath while the rest of the squad takes him down. Upon defeat, players will receive a reward that increases attack power when coming into contact with graces, stacking up to 10. This is the one I've encountered the least, and always when I'm not fighting Libra. A tower imbued with Frenzied Flame will spawn inflicting the Madness status effect. Upon defeating the Frenzied Flame enemies, 2 reward items will drop. Oh gosh, this can be one of the more annoying world events, especially since this pass can seal the player's levels. During the first few days of playing the game, I did not realize how to find the enemy, so I was losing levels left and right. Whenever I would see that indicator in the corner, I would always dread the next few minutes. Nowadays, it is much more straightforward locating the pests. Essentially, look up in the sky to see the pests retreating back to the main boss after an explosion occurs. This will lead you to them. Upon defeat, players will receive flasks that replenish HP alongside FP, which is fairly useful. From Augur Raid, Libra, and the many hordes, there are so many other world events in Nightreign that help to keep things fresh and changing from match to match. Next is the 100%, where I went through and got all the trophies. This is something I'm thinking of doing when I review games, or at least close to 100%. That'll ultimately help me to better understand the game. Jedi Survivor was the first, and I plan to continue this tradition, though I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. Now, how is getting all the trophies in Nightreign? Well, easy, but also RNG heavy. Thankfully, I had met some awesome people during my playthroughs to help trophy hunt, alongside take down bosses, explore, etc. If I had to compare the trophy collecting to another Soulsborne game, I'd say it is similar to Bloodborne and or Elden Ring's main game trophies, regarding difficulty. Thankfully, it is not like the Dark Souls trophies, which I've been dreading collecting them. PS1 through 3 and Demon Souls are the last games needed for me, so I'll eventually do that. I ended up collecting the Nightreign final trophy and being in the top 0.2%, which was pretty neat. I definitely grinded it within the first few weeks. Lastly, I'll end with my thoughts on the game and predictions for future DLCs. I find this game to be strangely extremely fun, though I understand its criticisms and some I agree with. For the most part though, I think Nightreign is a good addition to the Soulsborne lineup. While it may not be perfect, it certainly has its flaws, it is still an extremely enjoyable game to play. While I did go over a lot in this review, there's still so much more that I could talk about, from specific builds, optimal routes, and beyond. I feel that would be too much for one video. If you guys are interested, I'd be happy to make a follow-up video going over specific details, boss guides, etc. So let me know. But for future DLCs, I can see them releasing more than a few, varying from full-on gauntlets to shifting Earth locations. They've already been, releasing the Everdark Sovereign bosses, and I think that's probably like the first phase of their thing, because this is a lot more live service than their previous games, but they're gonna have to keep adding to it if they want to keep players. So that's why I am predicting that definitely be getting like a Madness Shifting Earth location. I don't know about a Deathblade, but I feel like a Madness. And then it would kind of be like the mountaintop where it's like super specific for a boss like Caligo, but it would still be pretty neat. I could definitely see them bring back other Dark Souls bosses if they end up introducing like a new Night Lord, bring a boss from each of the games games. Anyways, yeah, there's like so much they could do. Obviously, they could add new classes, weapons. We'll have to wait and see what they do. Post-editing skilled fawn here. When I originally wrote the script, they had not released the newest patch with duos alongside other tweaks. We'll quickly talk about the changes alongside some other important things I missed. With the newest update, players can now engage in duo expeditions. Previously, the game was locked with either solo or trio play. It was nice to see them add this for players looking to play with just another buddy. Relic's got a massive overhaul regarding the menu. Players are now able to filter through relics based on the bonuses they desire. Recently, I've been using the bonus increased rune acquisition for self and allies. This new feature has made finding and selecting these extremely easy. Builds in the future will be super easy to craft on the fly. One thing that was always quite strange to me was some of the reward descriptions. Previous to this update, there was an effect labeled infused weapon with bleed sass effect low on health, or something along those lines. It was strange because when my teammates, or enemies were low on health, it didn't work. It only procced when a critical hit was inflicted. I found to be misleading. Thankfully, this update seemed to fix the confusion. Players will now get the gist. Other reward descriptions have been updated as well. There were plenty of bugs and quality of life updates, but one that stood out the most to me was the ironized mark being more visible. Previously, I found it more difficult to see on some bosses, but generally it was clear to see. I guess now there's no excuse to lose that mark with it being so visible. Oh gosh, the Maris fight. I'm a bit split on this fight, to be honest. One hand, it is super awesome to see them add a Storm Ruler type fight in this game, as generally each Soulsborne game has one of them. Yorm in DS3, Rykard in Elden Ring, Storm King in Demon Souls. It is quite a lackluster fight compared to the aforementioned bosses. Still, it is cool to see them put a slight twist on the Storm Ruler fight. I realized as I was editing and playing more Nightreign that I hadn't talked about the endgame footprints of the match quite yet. This is a small feature that FromSoft added, but gives so much information alongside being visually interesting to watch. Stats from rescuing players to how many enemies were defeated can be found here, allowing friendly banter among friends to see who does best. This was the most recent update that Nightreign released. I want to include this in the review since it does change things to make it more accommodating for players. From solo, duos, and trios, there's a plethora of things to do in the game. Elden Ring Nightreign is the 8th installment in the Soulsborne lineup and changed the formula from past games. Is Nightreign worth playing? Well, I'd say yes. From awesome boss fights, meeting great people, and having a good time, I feel that Nightreign fulfills these slots. While it may not be perfect, it certainly has its issues, it is far from the worst game, and holds up well in the modern gaming market. If you have played Nightreign, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts below. Before I wrap up the video, I want to quickly say that my marathon is going on Twitch right now. I've been doing a Soulsborne marathon, streaming all the games, beating them with the Moonlight Greatsword. Depending on the timing, I have a few other surprises in store. While I was away, I posted a few videos where I compiled previous challenge runs. Something I've been wanting to do for a while is transfer a lot of the content onto the VODs channel. One of the reasons for doing this is because the main channel actually kind of was the VODs channel and main channel combined. And so originally I was like posting challenge runs, and then I'd also put the streams on here. So it was kind of just this like cluster mess. And so that's eventually why I made the VODs channel, so I could put a lot of the streams and like highlights and stuff on there. This upcoming weekend I plan to do this, so be on the lookout for more awesome videos. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. This greatly helps to support me and the channel, alongside pushing the video to others who may be interested. Try to do something kind for someone today, whether it's a small or a large gesture. This is your boy Skilled Fawn, and I'm out.